Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here for the Daily Blob, where we say good news, good news, good news. Bribing the Trump administration is working the way we all expected it would work. And I can't even make this horse crap up. So I've been talking about the grift or the graft or whatever the hell's going on with the mafioso of the United States recently, and how we have to worry about this from a competitive standpoint. Right? That basically when the Trump administration is going to take a 10% stake in Intel. Intel is basically probably in the death spiral, right? Trump doesn't want to be associated with a company that dies. And so the question is how is he going to kneecap Intel's competition to make sure that Intel survives, right? Intel survived. We just have to buy whatever potato chip they're selling this year. And I've been talking about, like, it's just weird stuff. There's all these tariffs, right? Trump has now floated a 200 to 300% tariffs on silicon chips coming into the United States. But if a company invests enough money in the United States, they get to bypass the tariffs. So I talked about this with Apple, right? Apple has stated, we don't know if it'll happen, that they're going to invest $500 billion in the United States. Ergo, they don't have to pay the tariffs. They don't have to pay tariffs. If you're a smaller company, or if you're a company for some reason doesn't need to invest in the United States, right, you're going to get hit with those massive tariffs. Basically, the companies that pay for Trump protection get Trump protection. It would be a shame if something happened to your kneecaps. I'm saying Trump is offering kneecap insurance to try to prevent anything from happening to your kneecaps. Why would anything happen to your kneecaps? Why do you have a baseball bat? Oh, here's a shit ton of money. I would like my kneecaps. Well, what I think is interesting with this, right, is we now have Masimo sues U.S. Customs over Apple Watch blood oxygen workaround. So basically with Masimo, they have patents on basically how blood oxygen sensors work for wearable devices. So I have an Apple Apple Watch, so the first one that came out. And one of the things I like about it is it has that blood oxygen sensor in it to try to determine my VO2 max, right? So when I'm out there running like that hippopotamus, I get to know how the oxygen in my system is doing, right? And so Apple put the hardware in, put all the computer programming in, all that kind of stuff, so it gives you your VO2 max and a whole bunch of other stuff relatively accurately. The thing is, Masimo says that it violates their patent, and so on the Ultra 2 watches and other Apple watches, basically Apple was banned from actually using that sensor going forward until they dealt with things in court, right? So Masimo is suing Apple. That's going through the whole court procedure. While it's going through the whole court procedure, Apple is banned from selling this particular sensor or enabling the sensor on the hardware that they've already sold. So what's interesting is I do believe it was last week, I got an email from Apple saying, good news, good news, good news. The blood oxygen sensor is going to work again. We have, quote unquote, found a workaround so that we can allow the blood oxygen sensor to work. Like, really? Really? Did they figure out a new algorithm to make the blood oxygen sensor work? Did they figure out a new process for determining the blood oxygen sensor? Because they've been banned by the US government from enabling this sensor. How do they, quote unquote, find a workaround? It appears that they just simply promised the Trump administration $500 billion in investment, and that was the workaround. Oh, you don't like that? You don't like that law, rule, regulation, or court order against you? Simply state you're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States, and apparently it all goes away. And this is why I'm very concerned. Look, this isn't that Trump eats at McDonald's. This isn't that Trump is, I don't know, is he for isolation? let's just say he's for isolation. This isn't an argument about isolation versus globalization or military adventurism versus, again, also isolation or whatever. This is the president acting abjectly corrupt in his position for the United States. Remember, Trump literally came out and stated he did not know if it was his responsibility to uphold the Constitution. The fucking president. This isn't a disagreement of the Constitution, right? That's a thing, right? We've had Bush and we've had Obama and we've had Carter, right? There are a lot of presidents that come in and they have their own weird-ass interpretations of the Constitution. But they all agree that they're supposed to support the Constitution. It's just how they read the Constitution, that's where it gets all weird. No, just Trump comes in. Trump comes in and goes, Constitution? I don't know. Maybe I will get to it. So anyways, last week when Apple announced the release of a, quote, redesigned blood oxygen feature to the Apple Watch, many figured Masimo, who had been suing Apple over patents related to the feature, would look for a way to fight back. Today the company did just that and filed a new lawsuit, but this time it's against the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. When Apple released the blood oxygen feature on the Apple Watch, medical device maker Masimo sued over alleged patent infringement. Over the years, the lawsuit dragged on and came to a head with an import ban in December 2023, which prohibited Apple from selling Apple Watch models with the blood oxygen feature in the US. Since then, after halting sales for a few days, Apple had been selling the Apple Watch Series 9 and Watch Ultra 2 without the blood oxygen feature, although it didn't remove the hardware. Rather, the feature was disabled via software. Last Thursday, Apple announced a, quote, redesigned blood oxygen feature, which calculates the blood oxygen on the iPhone rather than on the watch. Masimo filed a new complaint in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia on Wednesday. The company says U.S. Customs and Border Protection overstepped its authority and violated due process when it reversed its earlier decision on August 1st and allowed Apple to restore the feature. Moreover, Masimo says it found out about the decision when Apple publicly announced the return of the feature. So Apple was supposed to disable this feature per court order, right? The company that was suing them didn't even learn about this whole flip-flop until Apple announced it. Quote from Masimo, it has now come to light that the CBP thereafter reversed itself without any meaningful justification. Without meaningful justification? What the fuck do you think $500 billion is? Motherfucker. People say grease Trump's palms. Tim Cook came in with an oil truck, right? Meaningful justification. Come on now. It's how the American system apparently works in 2025. Without any material change in circumstances. Think about that. Without any meaningful justification, without any material change in circumstances, and without any notice to Masimo, let alone an opportunity for Masimo to be heard. Well, is Masimo going to put $500 billion into the United States? Is Masimo going to claim to put $500 billion into the United States? Well, what the fuck is your argument then? Doesn't sound like you have an argument. CBP changed its position on Apple's Watch plus iPhone redesign through an ex parte proceeding. Specifically on August 1st, 2025, CBP issued a 3 ex parte ruling permitting Apple to import devices that, when used with iPhones already in the United States, perform the same functionality that the ITC found to infringe Masimo's patents. Masimo only discovered this ruling on Thursday, August 14th, when Apple publicly announced it would be reintroducing the pulse oximetry functionality through a software update. The company is now asking the court for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction to block the CBP's decision and reinstate the original ruling that, quote, determined that Apple's redesigned watches could be imported only to the extent the infringing functionality was completely disabled. Masimo further argues that CBP's move, quote, effectively nullified the ITC's exclusion order against Apple. Apple's appeal of that ban is still pending before the federal court. So, Yep. This is the technology world we are in 2025. You get to buy the technology that the vendor has been able to grease the hand of Trump enough to be able to sell to you. It will be curious to see where this goes in the future. One of the problems that I see in how our capitalist system works here in the United States is honestly the issue of our patent system, right? So monopolies in our country are supposed to be bad, supposed to be horrible, except when it comes to ideas, right? The concept is that if people are not secure in the quote unquote ownership of an idea that they come up with, an invention that they come up with, then they're less likely to invest in trying to come up with new ideas. So what we have here is the concept of you create an idea, you create the patent for the idea, you put that information out into the public sphere so people can see what's going on, but then you get a monopoly basically on that idea. That's essentially what the technology companies have been doing over the past 30 years. One of the reasons they have been able to so successfully mine the foundations of our civilization is so many processes, so many things that we need to do in modern life basically have very patentable processes. Like if you can patent the concept for an idea, right, you put that in the patent office, and then anybody who tries to use that, they have to pay you a fee or get sued. This was like Adam Carolla. So Adam Carolla got sued, it was like 15 years ago, quite a while ago at this point, because he was doing podcasts. Right? So podcasts, right? If you don't know what a podcast is, basically files are stored on a file server somewhere. You have what's called an RSS feed or an XML feed, an XML file. The XML file basically says what the name of the podcast is. It says all the episodes in the podcast, and then it has a lot of like basically pointers, right? It points to where the file for the podcast is located. It points to any graphics for the podcast, that type of deal. Incredibly simple system. Incredibly simple system. Anyways, Adam Carolla got sued years ago because there was a company back in the 90s that essentially said that they had a patent on the whole concept of podcasting, right? The idea of essentially having a file that has pointers back to somewhere else and you can subscribe to it or whatever. They felt that they owned that idea. They went after Adam Carolla because for some reason they thought Adam Carolla's podcast was making a shit ton of money. And then everybody found out just how much money it wasn't making. That was the funny thing at the time. Like everybody had this idea that he was rolling in the money for this podcast. And then the discovery process, it came out to like he was making like $25,000 a year. Where did this go? Hey, God bless back in the day. But it wasn't really enough money to go after him for. So anyways, one of the big issues we have in our society, and this is an issue we have in our society. This is one of the failures our economic system has compared to the Chinese economic system right now. That's one of the things to think about with economic systems is who should derive the value in the system. Our system is based around whoever creates the ideas, gets a monopoly on that, and basically that's how they make their money. The Chinese system is on execution, right? Ideas are a dime a dozen. It's who the hell can build a building, shove 10,000 people in there, and solder shit together to make it work, right? So China profits off of execution. We profit off of ownership of the idea. And that is an argument. That's an argument. And there's good points to our system and really fucking horrible points to our system. There's good points to their system, but also pretty bad points to their system too. But it's just how the different systems work. The concern here, though, is this is how our system works, right? Our system works with these intellectual property protections. And so the question then becomes, when major corporations can literally just start greasing the palms of the Trump administration in order for the executive branch just to start making decisions, this goes back to the massive uncertainty of how our system even works, right? You come up with the idea, and again, when I say you might be IBM, you might be an employee for IBM, you might be an employee for Microsoft, you might be an employee for a startup company, right? Imagine your startup company comes up with the next game-changing idea, right? With this idea, you will be able to launch into the stratosphere, you'll be able to become the next Google, you'll be able to become the next Facebook, you'll be able to become the next thing, right? And you have a patent, right? And you have a monopoly on that concept. You see where the world is going. You see where the world will be in 2035. You build your patent to solve 2035 problems, and you're just gonna rake in the money. What happens when Apple can just come in, do a press conference, do a photo shoot with the Trump administration, say that they're going to put a lot more money in the US economy, and then all of a sudden, they don't have to give a fuck about your patent anymore? Right? What does that do to trust in our system? So much of our system is built on trust. It may be a shitty system, but you understand the shitty system. I don't know. I think this will be curious to see where it goes going forward. And this is the canary in the coal mine of why I abhor the idea of the Trump administration owning 10% of Intel. Right? If you're like Eli, I think you're really overreacting about Trump administration owning 10% of Intel. This is exactly why I'm concerned about them owning 10% of Intel. What happens when Intel is basically told they don't have to worry about other people's patents? Oh, it's just not gonna be good. It's just not gonna be good. So what do you think about this? What do you think about essentially Apple being able to bribe their way out of legal decisions? What do you think about the Trump administration not even bothering to tell the other side what the hell is going on? How do you think this is going to work out at the end of the day for our industry? Put your thoughts down below. Leave us a comment, leave us a good comment, leave us a horrible comment. Call me amazing, call me a moron. All that matters is that interaction. So say something down below. And with that, see y'all later.